This is episode 3, in the city, part 2, around the home. This is a rented lot that I moved into about 5 or 6 years ago, and I got permission to grow stuff around it, but I didn't have much space to work with, and there was a few more trees here at the time, so it was very shady, not much space to work with. So I went to work. I just recently planted this dwarf banana tree. I'm surrounded by Spanish needles, and this is dog fennel. No edible uses or medicinal uses that I know of. But we have lantana. That was here when I came here. There's no edible or medicinal uses that I know of, but they make some pretty flowers, and the butterflies like these. I always see butterflies around because of these. We have Caesar weed. Caesar weed here is technically edible, but only the youngest leaves should be boiled and boiled twice. It's like a famine food. It's not a choice edible. And the stems, the stalks, were used for cordage, to make cordage. That's how they were brought here. The reason they were brought here to this country, to Florida, matter of fact. But over here I've got lots of yams. I started growing lots of winged yam, Dioscorea alata. And the way to identify them is the arrowhead-shaped leaves. They can get pretty big. As you can see, this one's pretty big. And the vine that they're on is square. It's a square vine with purple edges on it. Let's see if I can get a good shot of this. It's hard to get a good shot of this. That's the winged yam. It's going to have air bulbils, hanging tubers are going to be forming on it that are edible, boiled, peeled and boiled. And the yam can get very, very large. The yam in the ground is a large tuber. Starts out small, and then over years it continues to grow. And some are 50 years old, 100 years old, out in the woods around here, where you can find 10-pound yams up to 50-pound yams. And in certain parts of Florida, there's been 100-pound yams. And recently I saw a photo from, I think, Sarasota area of a 150-pound yam. So I've got yams all over the place. I've also got some other kinds. I have purple yams. I've got blackberry vines here. I've got beautyberry. Beautyberry is Calicarpa americana. The berries start off green, and then they start turning pink. They're edible technically, but they're bland and kind of rank tasting to me. Some people like them okay, most people don't, that I know of. But the leaves are the main thing. You can make berries, you can make jam or jelly from the berries, or you can eat them raw. But the leaves have a substance in them that repels mosquitoes. I rub these leaves. I covered this in the first or second episode. I rub these leaves on me when I'm going out and about, especially during the rainy season when the mosquitoes are really thick. Now these are sword ferns. There's four or five different species of sword fern in Florida. 4 of those 5 are native species. This one is not, but this is the only one with edible tubers. And they're very invasive. Once you get them established, they'll just spread out on their own. But the thing that's edible about these are the tubers. So what I do is reach down. Let me get it in an angle where you can see better. Okay, when I reach down, grab a bunch, and just start pulling easily up, slow and steady, and what I'll come up with are some tubers. I can find anywhere from one tuber to several to a dozen that way. Here's one. I'll pull it off. There's one tuber right there. They go from brown, well, they start off white when they're young and then they turn brown. And they're edible. They get bigger than that too. They have protein, carbs, fat, all the ingredients that you need in a survival situation. Not much protein, but you can get some out of it, which means if you get dozens and dozens of seeds, tubers I mean, and they work like seeds, I can plant those somewhere else and they'll come up as these ferns. So that's the way to bring them to your place, is to either pull up the tubers, collect the tubers, and then transplant them wherever you want them, or dig up the whole plant, a few here and there, take them to where you want to grow them, stick them in the ground, and they'll spread out. They're very resilient. They're sword ferns, called sword ferns. I can't think of the genus right now. It's like one of those long Latin or Greek names. Over here I have a poke. There's a small poke. There's a small pokeweed. I touched on them in the first episode. But I have a Suriname cherry bush over here. I haven't collected any fruit from it yet. It hasn't produced any fruit. It's been a few years. I'm thinking I probably need to get a couple more around here for pollination purposes. Not sure. My banana trees, they're just now producing bananas a little at a time. Be careful of banana leaves when you're walking through the jungle, because underneath I had a wasp nest here a little while ago. They like to build underneath large leaves like this. But I was talking about bananas earlier and how you can use it for shelter material. You can use banana leaves to wrap food for cooking or for storage. And you can use them to collect rainwater for drinking. And these are my bananas on my own personal banana tree. I planted this about 5 years ago at one very small banana sprout. That's what started all this for the bananas. Anyway, here's some yams. I have yams all over the place. Yams around this tree. Here's some purple yams. These are called purple yams or Asian yams, or I don't know technically what they're called. See the purple all over the stem, along the vine. Purple there. And of course you got your classic arrowhead shaped leaves. And these are normally they're pairs. They're called opposite leaves because you get pairs of them. But frequently you'll see the okay, there's two here. There's just one underneath that vine. There's two there. They're called opposite leaves because you have one opposite the other. If it was just one leaf and one leaf and one leaf, that would be called alternating or alternate leaves. Getting tongue-tied here. And bitter gourd. I've got some bitter gourd over here. That's Charantia. I forgot the first part of that one. But these gourds are edible when they're green. But they need to be boiled. They have to be boiled or they can make you sick. And those red seeds inside of it, the red coating around those seeds is, or arils. They're called arils. The seeds themselves are called arils, with the fleshy coating around them. That fleshy coating is a very important substance that we need to survive on, a vitamin or mineral of some kind. I can't think of the name of it at the moment. These leaves can be boiled in 2 changes of water. The whole thing is bitter though. Everything's bitter. I'd like to find a green one to show you. The green ones are the edible gourds on these, and when they first start, okay, here's one. There, look at that baby. That whole thing is edible, boiled. And that's not even the wild species. This is the cultivated species from India. I have some of the wild species over here. They would make a good famine food resource. Unless you're pregnant, I would not advise pregnant women to eat these, and they may be poisonous to dogs. But that's the cultivated species. Over here I have some wild species in the woods. A little patch of woods here. Okay, here it is. See, it looks exactly the same, but this is the wild species. The gourds they grow look slightly different, but they start off green and bumpy, but not as bumpy as that other one. I'd like to find one, but I don't think I'm going to be successful in finding one right off the bat to show you. And I don't have a lot of this vine because there's so many other vines, and there's blackberries, there's sword ferns, yams, and I'll show you the difference between the yams and the toxic air potato leaves. Can look very similar. That's a toxic air potato leaf. And you can see the difference. These get bigger, of course, but there's a definite similarity in them. This is the toxic air potato right there, and that's the yam. See the difference? Toxic air potato, very toxic, nothing good about this plant, and a cultivated yam in the ground that also produces edible, what's called bulbils, or hanging bulbils, hanging tubers that will grow along the vine in a couple months. It's still early. These die off in the winter and come back in the spring and flourish in the summer. And they go right up this tree, and they wrap around this oak tree up there, and they're reaching for the sky. They're reaching for the sun. I've seen them covering the tops of oak trees around here. And like I said, those yams can get very big in the ground after so many years. They just keep growing and growing and growing every year. The winter they die off from the above ground. The vines die off in the winter, and then they come back up in the summer. This is a podocarpus. I'm hoping to get some foot fruit from this podocarpus someday. And I've got loquat. Loquat has medicinal purposes, but I like the yellow fruit. This is just a young one here. The yellow fruit of the loquat are produced in the fall or winter, and they're gone by the late spring. And here we're in the early summer months. That's about it for what's around the home. All this stuff was not here when I first moved in. When I first moved into this place, I planted all this stuff. The loquats, the Suriname cherry, the bananas, the yams, the sword ferns, the bitter gourd, the cultivated bitter gourd. And I have moringa. I have moringa trees. Here's a small moringa tree here. There's another one here. This one's getting up there. I'll be cutting this one off at the top pretty soon so that it'll bush out. I want it to produce as many leaves as possible. That's the moringa. I touched on them earlier, or tried to. I may have to redo that video. There's one of my papaya trees. I've got my own papaya trees going. I just started those earlier this year. And I also have recently new addition. This is Japan holly, dwarf Japan holly. Its technical name is Ilex vomitoria variation nana. And the trick with these is that they're not exactly edible. You can make a caffeinated tea from the leaves. When it becomes necessary to forage for a caffeinated drink, I'm going to have these leaves to set in the sun, and what I do is I use a box with aluminum foil around it, around the inside of the box. Here's my other moringa tree. There's poke. There's some poke. The berries are now very bright. Medicinal uses for these berries is 1 or 2 per day, and don't eat the seeds, for arthritis. But you want to check with an